She didn't say much, just returned a wallet. But 10 minutes later, black SUVs lined the street. The doorbell chimed once, then again. FBI agents walked in without a word. One flashed a badge. Another reached up and quietly locked the door. Phones down. Stay seated, one said. Calm but absolute. Chairs froze mid-turn. Mugs paused mid-sip. No one moved. Near the window, a woman in her 50s looked up from her black coffee. Not afraid, just, confused. She hadn't spoken. She hadn't moved. And yet, every agent in the room was facing her. But what froze the entire cafe wasn't the wallet. It was when one agent leaned in and whispered, "You used to go by the call sign Wren. Why have you come back?" Her name was Helen Marlowe. She looked like the kind of woman you'd walk past 100 times and never notice. Mid-50s, plain clothes, hair always tied back loosely, no makeup, no jewelry. She lived alone in a modest apartment 2 blocks from the hospital, where she worked the night shift as a janitor. No one ever asked much about her. She didn't invite questions. Every morning, just after sunrise, she'd finish her shift, hang up her faded green scrub jacket, and walk quietly to the same corner cafe on 8th Street. Same table near the window, same drink, black coffee, no cream, no sugar. The staff didn't ask her name. They just called her ma'am and placed the cup down without a word. She always tipped 2 crumpled bills under the saucer and left quietly. People came and went around her. Couples, students, nurses just off their own shifts. She never interrupted, never inserted herself. But if someone dropped their phone, she'd pick it up. If the barista forgot a drink, she'd gently gesture toward it. Always helpful, never loud. A presence, quiet, consistent. Like the ticking of a clock you forget is there. There was something in her eyes, though. Not sadness exactly, not fatigue either. Something sharper. Like she was always scanning. Not for danger, but for patterns. For threats. For exits. More than one person had quietly wondered if she had some kind of military past. Her posture was too straight for someone who scrubbed floors all night. Her reflexes, the way she caught a ceramic cup before it hit the ground without even glancing, seemed too precise. There was a rumor once that someone had seen a faint tattoo on her wrist, something like a pair of wings. But no one ever asked. Somehow you just didn't. Helen didn't tell stories. She didn't talk about family, didn't carry photos. Her only routine was this cafe, her 10 minutes of stillness before heading home to sleep. But every now and then, something would pull the curtain back. Just a little. Like the day a man in line had a panic attack. Trembling, struggling to breathe. Helen stepped in instantly, not just helping, commanding. She told people to back away. She gave the man instructions in a calm, firm voice no one dared question. She knelt beside him, kept his airway open, and didn't leave his side until paramedics arrived. After that, a few more people noticed her, still from a distance, still unsure what exactly they were seeing, because even in moments like that, even in crisis, she never seemed proud. She never lingered. She simply returned to her coffee, stared out the window, and resumed her silence. And that morning, and the one that changed everything, had started no differently. Same table, same cup, same quiet, until she picked up a wallet that didn't belong to her, until the street outside filled with black SUVs, until the entire cafe turned to face Helen Marlowe. That morning, the cafe was half full. Quiet chatter, gentle clinking of mugs, sunlight drifting lazily across the worn wooden floors. Helen Marlowe sat where she always did, second table from the window, back straight, hands wrapped around a steaming mug of black coffee. It was almost time to leave. She'd just folded a napkin neatly and placed it beside her saucer when she noticed it. A wallet, leather, dark brown, worn and cracked at the corners. It lay near the end of the counter, half tucked under a stool. No one seemed to notice it, or claim it. A teenage boy looked over, then back to his phone. The barista caught her eye but just shrugged. Helen stood up quietly and walked to the counter, the wallet in hand. "Someone left this," she said, setting it down gently. The young barista gave a polite smile, but didn't reach for it. "Maybe just leave it there. We can, Hold it in the lost and found, he muttered, clearly unsure. Helen raised an eyebrow slightly. The barista didn't know what made him nervous, the wallet or the way she looked at it. She nodded once, then looked down at the object in front of her. Worn. Too old for the college crowd. Too military-looking to be casual. She turned it over. No clasp, no lock, just a folded seam and a soft crease, as if it had been carried too long in the same pocket. Helen opened it. Inside, a military ID card, laminated, scratched. The photo was of a man maybe in his 30s. Name, J. Teller. Branch, intelligence. Clearance level, redacted. But it wasn't the photo that made her stop. It was the red stamp across the bottom. Invalidated, deceased. She paused, blinked slowly, then carefully slid her thumb into the next slot. A folded piece of paper, faint yellowing along the edges. It had been opened and refolded 100 times. Helen unfolded it. Coordinates. Handwritten. In a code she recognized immediately, though it hadn't been used in over 20 years. And beneath the coordinates, 4 words in blocky ink. Do not trust higher rank. Her fingers held the note steady, but her eye, for the first time that morning, narrowed just slightly. The cafe noise faded behind her, her breath steady, her posture unchanged. But something behind her gaze had shifted, like a lock clicking open. She folded the paper back, slid it into the wallet, closed it, then looked up at the barista. I'll hold on to this, she said flatly. He didn't argue. Helen returned to her table, sat down slowly, and took a final sip of her coffee, as if nothing had changed, as if the world hadn't just tilted slightly under her feet. But she didn't leave right away. She watched the sidewalk, the corners, the windows across the street. Somewhere, she knew, someone was already looking for that wallet, or perhaps for the person who picked it up. She reached into her coat pocket, fingers brushing against the faint outline of something long dormant. Not a phone, not a weapon, just a small metal coin, smooth on one side, engraved on the other, a challenge coin, one not issued by any official branch anymore. A coin only given to those who had served in deep-tier reconnaissance ops, units that officially never existed, units that weren't supposed to leave survivors. Helen closed her eyes for a moment. Teller. He wasn't supposed to have survived either, which meant one of two things. Either he hadn't, or someone wanted her to believe he had. The wallet never made it to Lost and Found. Helen kept it, quietly, deliberately. But the cameras saw everything. The cafe had 4 security feeds, 2 inside, 2 outside, and one of them, positioned above the register, caught the exact moment she unfolded the paper. Caught the military ID, caught the red stamp, invalidated, deceased. The footage pinged an automated surveillance filter designed to recognize certain key phrases, stamps, and insignia from defunct military operations. Operations that technically never happened. That filter belonged to a dormant protocol buried under Homeland Security's Cold Archive initiative, a line of defense not touched in over a decade, until now. 10 minutes later, the street outside began to change. Subtly at first, a matte black SUV rolled to a stop across from the cafe, then another, then 2 more, all unmarked, engines idling, no sirens, no flashing lights, just shadows stepping out. Some wore windbreakers. Others looked like office workers with earpieces. 2 crossed the street casually and entered the cafe, chatting about the weather like they were tourists. Another stood outside the bakery next door, pretending to scroll his phone. Inside, Helen was still sitting at her table. Coffee gone cold, eyes steady. She saw the man in the tan coat walk in and order chamomile tea. She saw the woman with the oversized scarf sit by the door, glancing twice at the corners of the room. She recognized the pattern. Perimeter compression. Same move used during extractions. Or raids. And then the barista got a text. He read it. His face paled. He walked toward the back door but stopped. It was already locked. Automatic deadbolt. Triggered remotely. Helen stood up slowly, not in a rush, not afraid. She took her coat, slipped it on, and adjusted the strap of her worn canvas bag. The wallet, now hidden inside, pressed lightly against her hip. She stepped toward the door, The man with the tea turned just enough to block her path. "Excuse me," she said, not looking at him. He didn't move. Then, another voice, low and composed, from behind her. "Ma'am, I need you to sit back down." She turned. A younger man stood there. Late 30s. Buzz cut, earpiece. He wasn't pretending to be a tourist. He held no weapon, no badge, just authority. Helen met his eyes, and for a moment something flickered there. Recognition, doubt, awe. She exhaled through her nose, calm, annoyed. "You're 10 minutes slower than you used to be," she said dryly. The agent didn't flinch, but the barista behind him did. Helen glanced around. The cafe was no longer a cafe. It was a cordon. The doors, both front and rear, were now sealed. The people inside had started to sense something wasn't right. A couple stood up to leave, only to be stopped gently by someone in a ball cap, holding a muffin and smiling too much. The woman near the window whispered to her husband. The man with the laptop closed it without saving. No one said the word FBI, but everyone knew. A subtle shift in the air, and all eyes, eventually, turned to Helen. She gave the young agent one more look, calculating, not afraid. Then she turned and sat back down, folding her hands neatly over the canvas bag. "You already know what was inside that wallet," she said. "You wouldn't be here otherwise." The agent stepped closer, speaking just above a whisper. "We weren't expecting you, ma'am." She tilted her head. "I wasn't expecting to be found." Then he said it, the sentence that silenced the room. "You used to go by the call sign Wren. Why have you come back?" That was when no one breathed. No one sipped. Even the agent standing guard blinked slower. Because Wren, if the stories were true and wasn't a person, Wren was a rumor, a fallback ghost, a name used in internal war games to represent a classified operator so deep they were considered untraceable. Wren wasn't supposed to exist, and now she was sitting in a cafe holding a wallet marked deceased. Helen didn't answer right away. She just leaned back slightly in her chair. Not smug, not defensive, just done hiding. The room had gone still, not quiet, still. Not a sip, not a breath, not a scrape of chair. Even the music from the cafe's overhead speakers had faded into irrelevance. The agent's words still hung in the air. "You used to go by the call sign Wren. Why have you come back?" It wasn't a question. Not really. It was a confession. That they knew who she was, or at least who she used to be. Helen Marlowe said nothing at first. She just looked at him. Not surprised, not shaken, just measuring. The young agent held his stance, barely. His voice had softened after saying it, as if the weight of the name had taken something from him. Around them, the customers remained frozen, unsure if they were in the middle of a raid, a mistake, or a moment from a film. Someone dropped a spoon. No one moved to pick it up. Then Helen finally spoke. Her voice was low but razor clear. "Who recorded the coordinates?" The agent blinked. "Ma'am?" "On the note," she said. "The one inside the wallet. Those coordinates weren't random. They were a fallback extraction grid from a mission that was scrubbed off the books. My mission." The agent didn't answer. Not right away. He shifted just slightly, then nodded once. "You're not supposed to know about that," he said. "No one is," she replied flatly, "because my team never made it out." Her gaze sharpened. "And no one deserved to, except me." There it was, the line that cut through everything. Past protocol, past history, past silence. She wasn't being humble. She wasn't being dramatic. She was stating a fact, one that didn't need explanation. Whatever had happened during that mission, whatever had gone wrong, she was the only one left, and she didn't believe that was a coincidence. The young agent hesitated, then sat across from her. He leaned in, eyes steady, voice just above a whisper. "My mother used to tell stories," he said, "about someone who used the name Wren. She worked signals intelligence in Munich, late Cold War. Said Wren was a ghost, the kind that didn't send orders. Just showed up when the orders failed." Helen didn't blink. "Your mother have a name?" "Sergeant Lorraine Hartman." Something flickered behind Helen's eyes. The name was familiar, not personally, but in the stack of paper reports she once decoded. in a radio transmission that never completed. She tucked the thought away. The agent continued. Most people didn't believe her. About you. Said Wren was just a fallback name for black ops simulations. But I did. And after what I saw today, after what came up when we scanned that wallet, I think I know why she believed it too. He reached into his coat. Slowly, carefully, not drawing a weapon. He set a small, weathered map folder on the table, opened it. Inside, a satellite photo, dated from a time when digital archives weren't supposed to exist. The image showed a fragment of terrain marked with hand-drawn coordinates, identical to the ones in the wallet. A location deep in Eastern Europe, long considered uninhabitable. This was buried in a file labeled Operation Vulture Echo, redacted 6 ways to hell. No names, no dates, but the grid pattern matches your old team's emergency fallback. Helen stared at it, quiet, then softly. They were supposed to extract us from the north, but the signal never came. The pilot was warned off. Someone up the chain pulled the plug after we'd been compromised. My entire team was still alive when they made that decision. You made it out, the agent said. Not because of them, Helen replied, because I ignored protocol. A pause. That was my final act, she added. Burn the name. Disappear. Because the moment I stayed, I'd be hunted. The agent leaned back slightly, visibly struggling with the reality before him. Around them, the tension remained, but now it had shifted from fear to reverence. Even the civilians, though they couldn't make out every word, could feel something ancient moving beneath the surface. The man next to the pastry case slowly put down his phone and lowered his eyes. Another agent near the door stood just a little straighter. One by one, without instruction, the team surrounding Helen adjusted their posture. Not to confront her, but to acknowledge her. She was no longer a target. She was someone whose name had been buried so deep, it echoed louder in silence. Long before she was Helen Marlowe, the quiet woman in the cafe, she was Echo 7 in the comms log, known by voice, never by face. Call sign, Wren. Her real job wasn't to fire weapons. She commanded silence, encryption, confusion. Her battlefield was radio waves and shattered dialects. A single wrong frequency could kill an entire unit. She was a strategic electronic operations officer, trained to develop real-time encryption protocols and reprogram field communications, while bullets were flying overhead. The kind of work that never got medals, only deniability. She was recruited in the late 80s, quietly, after a synthetic linguistics thesis caught the attention of someone from Langley who never gave his name. After that, she disappeared from university records, reappeared in the Balkans 6 years later. No passport, no uniform, no trail. That last mission, the one they buried, wasn't supposed to be complicated. On paper, it was a supportive signal relay op in a neutral country. Her team, 4 field agents, 1 local asset, and herself. What they weren't told, the operation was meant to fail. They had been sent as bait, a setup to provoke an international incident. When she intercepted a signal meant for the enemy and decoded it within seconds, the truth came out. Someone inside their own command structure had sold the fallback coordinates. The SEAL unit they were guiding remotely was walking straight into an ambush. Their orders were to stay silent, to let it play out. But Helen, or Wren back then, made a different call. She broke protocol. She rerouted power from their own comms array and overrode the relay. She sent a single burst transmission. No voice, no signature. Just 6 tones, strung together in a pattern only one SEAL unit in the world would recognize. It was called the Phantom Code, a last-ditch sequence buried into elite training protocols, never to be used unless someone on the inside knew things had gone rotten. The SEAL unit turned, evaded. They lost 1 man, but saved 12 others. The mission was salvaged, but her team never made it out. As soon as the transmission was sent, the betrayal became obvious. The local asset vanished. Air extraction was aborted. She heard the denial herself across open channels. Unit Echo 7 has been compromised. No recovery. Package presumed destroyed. Burn the name. She and her team were hunted for days. One by one, they were picked off. Not by enemy forces, but by a black cell with American gear and blank uniforms. Helen survived by bleeding into the landscape. 2 weeks in cold hills, one broken leg, no food. She was rescued by a civilian convoy headed toward the Swiss border, posing as a Red Cross translator. She didn't speak, didn't cry, just watched. By the time she reached safety, the world had moved on. The story never hit the papers. The official report listed the team as non-operational due to natural disaster. The SEALs that survived, they were split, reassigned, and sworn to silence. Only one ever tried to reach her again. He mailed her something years later. No note, no return address. Just a small challenge coin engraved with the same sequence of 6 tones. The same she had used to save them. She kept it, never spoke of it, and she disappeared. New name, new job, new city. But not a day passed that she didn't remember those coordinates. Didn't replay the voice of her teammates, laughing, briefing, then screaming. She was the one who had survived, and not once did she ever believe that was a blessing. So when she opened that wallet in the cafe, when she saw that same grid of numbers, handwritten and folded inside, she knew it wasn't an accident. Someone out there remembered. Someone had called Wren back into the light. Not to finish a mission, but maybe to reveal who had ordered it erased in the first place. The folder was still open on the cafe table. The map, the coordinates, the buried satellite photo. Proof, not just of her past, but of a betrayal that had never been brought to light. The agent across from her, young, sharp, clearly shaken, adjusted his earpiece. "Ma'am," he said, gently now, "we need you to come with us. Just to talk. Off the record." Helen didn't answer. Her eyes had shifted, not to the agent, but over his shoulder. Through the reflection in the cafe window, she saw the SUV across the street. She saw the man leaning against it, sunglasses too dark for the cloudy day, a stiffness in his stance too deliberate for casual. And then she heard it, a voice coming from a second agent who had just stepped inside the cafe. He wasn't dressed like the others. His suit was cleaner, his walk slower. He didn't flash a badge. He didn't speak to civilians. He made a straight line to the back of the room and stood behind the young officer. The agent at her table instinctively straightened. "Assistant Director Graves," he said. Helen turned, her gaze locked with the newcomer. Graves. The name was a crack of thunder in her mind, not because it was unfamiliar, but because she'd heard it before. On a cold night under static radio, while a voice said, "Burn the name. No recovery." Graves had been a junior intelligence handler back then, not high up, but close enough to the mission. Close enough to have watched it unravel and said nothing. He had aged well, a touch of gray, but no guilt in his expression. "Helen," he said, calm as a man ordering breakfast, "you shouldn't have opened that wallet." Helen's hand tightened slightly around her bag strap. "And you," she said, voice low and level, "shouldn't still have clearance." There was no attempt at denial, just a small smile. "You're a liability now, a walking contradiction. They'll want a statement. I can make it easy. Quiet, we both know the game." Helen stood. The younger agent next to her tensed slightly, as if expecting resistance. But she didn't run, didn't raise her voice. She looked Graves in the eye and said only one thing. "I don't talk to people who signed off on leaving my team behind." That stopped everything. Graves' face tightened. His mask cracked, just slightly. But the reaction didn't come from him. It came from the other side of the cafe. A chair scraped the floor, softly, deliberately. A man, maybe mid-40s, simple clothes, book in his hand, stood up. Everyone turned. He had been there the whole time, watching, waiting, quiet as furniture. But now he stepped forward, slowly, and stopped beside Helen. He looked at Graves, then looked at her. "It was you," he said softly. Helen turned, studying his face. She didn't recognize him. "You used that 6-tone burst, phantom code." She blinked. "Razor team?" she asked. He nodded. "Unit Bravo. I was the comms officer. We made it out because of that burst." His voice faltered, just a little. "We never knew who sent it. Just that someone disobeyed the order. And then, without a word, he stood straight and saluted. Not a casual gesture, not a half joke or a nostalgic flick of the hand, a full, formal military salute in front of everyone. His fingers shook slightly, but his eyes never left hers. And in that moment, the cafe changed again. The chatter stopped. The glances faded. Because now, the woman who'd been mistaken for just another lonely regular was no longer invisible. She was being honored. Silently, solemnly. Even the younger FBI agent beside her straightened his posture, as if understanding something deep in his training had just clicked into place. Graves looked around, saw the atmosphere shift. He stepped back without a word. Helen didn't salute back. She just placed a hand over her chest, a quiet, private return. Then she turned toward the door. No one stopped her. No one dared. The door chimed once more. This time, no one followed her out. Helen Marlowe stepped into the cold air, the late morning sunlight cutting through the mist like a quiet spotlight. Her steps were even, no rush, no hesitation. She didn't look back. Behind her, the cafe remained silent. No one returned to their conversations. No one dared. Something had shifted in that room, and everyone felt it, even if they couldn't explain why. No cuffs, no commands, no questions. The young agent, the one who had first spoken to her, followed her just to the sidewalk. He didn't try to stop her, just walked beside her a few paces behind, unsure if he was escorting a civilian, a ghost, or a relic from a truth bigger than his clearance level. At the curb, Helen paused. She turned to him. Not to threaten, not to thank, just to speak one last truth. "I'm not coming back," she said softly. The agent lowered his gaze, not out of fear, but out of something bordering on respect. "You don't need to," he replied, "but we won't let them erase this again." Helen looked past him, to the cafe window, to the street, to the black SUVs still parked with their engines quietly humming. She almost smiled, but didn't. "Good," she said. "Someone should remember." She turned again, walking away, not toward a vehicle, not toward a safe house, just down the block, disappearing into the rhythm of the city like she always had. Not a legend, not a hero, just a woman who once broke protocol and saved lives. At the door, the young agent watched her go. He didn't call for backup. He didn't log it in real time. He just stood there, hands in his coat, eyes lingering where she'd gone, as if committing the moment to memory. The wind picked up, brushing dust across the sidewalk. A pigeon fluttered overhead. The street returned to life, slowly, cautiously, like the city had held its breath and was now allowed to exhale. And then a simple line appeared. "Some names have been changed for security reasons, but the woman and the story are real." Maybe she really was just returning a wallet. Maybe she knew exactly what she was doing. But in a world where people are too quick to judge by appearance, too eager to scroll past the quiet ones, Helen Marlowe reminds us of something we often forget. Some of the most extraordinary people move in silence. She didn't carry medals. She didn't wear her past like a badge. And yet the moment demanded it, and her truth rose quietly, powerfully. In today's world, that matters more than ever. We live in a time where voices are loud, but integrity is rare, where recognition often goes to those who shout, not those who serve quietly. How many people like Helen walk among us today? The janitor at the hospital, the woman at the bus stop, the man folding napkins at the diner. Do we even stop long enough to wonder who they once were? Maybe the question isn't whether heroes exist. Maybe it's whether we still know how to see them. And what about the young agent? The one who believed the stories when no one else did. Isn't that what we hope the next generation will do? Not just follow orders, but recognize honor, even when it's buried. So here's what I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever met someone who seemed ordinary until they weren't? Do you think stories like Helen's could happen in today's world? And would anyone believe them? Tell us in the comments. Let's honor those we almost overlooked. And if this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone in your life, please hit that like button, Subscribe for more stories that matter, and share this video with someone who still believes in quiet courage. Thank you for watching, and as always, stay kind, stay curious, and never stop looking twice at the people no one's watching.